Hello and welcome to this month's Talkin' Blues. Our subject this month is going to be crazy little thing called pedal points. Now, pedal points is a technical term, and it's often confused with the term pedal tone. If you look in your music dictionary, you'll see that pedal tone refers to the fundamental note of a wind instrument, but that's not what we're dealing with here. We're talking pedal point, which is a sustained note that's held against a moving melody or a moving harmony. We're all familiar with the sound. It's used in every style of music. You've heard it yourself a million times. So we're going to concentrate on how it's applied in blues and maybe expand the concept a little bit so you can use different techniques to get the same general effect. Now, there's one particular example of pedal points that's probably the most well known in the blues world, and that would be, for most people, from Stevie Ray Vaughan's solo on the tune Cold Shot. Now, if you listen to that record, you'll hear him go, you know, something like that, right? Now, Stevie didn't invent that sound. Actually, years before Stevie, Buddy Guy was doing a similar thing. A guy named Lonnie Mack, one of the biggest influences on Stevie when he was young, was doing a similar thing. And I don't think even they invented it. The concept, of course, has been around forever. It's even been used in classical music and you name it. But back in the 50s, jazz organists, you know, they're playing with two hands, and they would sustain a note or even like take a matchbook cover and wedge it in there so a note would just be held down permanently, and then they'd riff against that note, you know. So this became kind of a hip sound in the blues organ trio kind of a deal. So, you know, Buddy Guy and Lonnie Mack all came out of that kind of environment and brought it to the guitar, and then from there Stevie picked it up and used it in his example. Now, what's going on there is basically you pick a note and you hold on to it while you move the melody around. So it's a double stop in the sense that you're playing two notes at a time, but unlike the other double stops that we play, like that, where the interval between the two notes is consistent and you sort of move them in parallel up and down the neck. With pedal points, what you're doing is holding one note and moving the melody against it, so the interval is always changing. In this case, taking a look at figure number 1, here's something that's reminiscent of the style that Stevie Ray Vaughan used. You've got B flat on the 4th string. We'll just do it in B flat. What the heck, why not, huh? And then the first finger on B flat on the 1st string. And then what I'm going to do is play as my melody. I'll use the straight up blues scale or minor pentatonic sound and move that against the high note. So this would be called an inverted pedal point if you're keeping score. So my middle finger is going to pluck that high note. I'm using hybrid picking. So I'm holding the pick normally between my thumb and index finger, and I play my melody. But with every note, I simultaneously pluck the high string. Now you can finger that in different places on the neck, right? And you might find some that are easier for you to play, but this is basically the sort of the central location here. So once I establish the scale pattern, then of course I'm not just going to play the scale. I want to play something that sounds a little hipper. So I think of what's a cool lick, and in figure number 2, you get, right, kind of a cool jazzy little lick there. So I'm going to play that lick, and against that I'm going to use my middle finger and apply the pedal. And there you go. So there's that sound, and Stevie used it more than once, you know, and once you learn the technique, you find places to use it. Now, like all these specialized techniques, you don't want to overuse it. It's sort of an alternate, gives you a little bit of a way to apply a different texture to your solo. But it's a great idea to have. Now, once you get the idea, then you start saying, well, if I can sustain that note, what else can I do, right? Well, let's flip it on its head and say, instead of sustaining the high note against a melody underneath, why don't we put the sustain on the low end and move the melody above it, like this. Now here I'm picking B flat on the 4th string with my pick, and then I'm using my finger to pluck the Now, with each new technique, of course, you got to figure out how to work around it. Some phrases come easy, some phrases are a little trickier, but it's more about expanding on the idea.